Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into something that honestly is so fundamental, it's almost easy to miss. We're looking at the connection between music and language.
Yeah, it's this really deep, sometimes surprising connection. Our mission here is to, really explore how words and sounds weave together from way back ancient origins right up to modern AI.
And we'll see how they shape, well, everything, our brains, our cultures, even how we create things.
Exactly. And we're using Lee Berry's work, The Music of Language, as our guide. It pulls together like 2 decades of his thinking on this. Really rich stuff.
It is, and it starts with a great question for you listening. Have you ever really thought about how linked the tunes you hum and the words you speak actually are? It's way more than just, putting lyrics over a beat.
Oh, much more. It might be absolutely fundamental to who we are, a kind of bedrock.
Okay, so let's get into it. Barry brings up this really intriguing idea that music might have actually come before language.
Yeah, potentially going back, 35,000 years? The idea is that early humans used Bi-percussion maybe as communication, maybe just for fun.
It makes you think about kids, right? That universal fun of just playing with sounds and words, that joy in it.
Absolutely. And the neurological link here is just fascinating. Take aphasia, for instance.
Right, that's when someone loses language ability, maybe after a stroke.
Exactly. They might not be able to use or understand words, but, and this is wild, their ability to sing those exact same words, often totally unaffected.
So they can't say hello, but they could maybe sing it.
Precisely. It's like the brain keeps hold of the rhythmic pattern of the language. Barry says it's like language is formatted with bar lines. That rhythm helps bring the words back.
He even says, even this sentence has a rhythm. You feel it when you speak. The stresses.
Yeah, the upbeats and downbeats in how we talk. It's crucial for getting ideas across. Try reading a sentence with all the stresses wrong.
It just sounds like nonsense, like a different language almost.
Totally unintelligible. So the rhythm isn't just decoration, it's part of the meaning itself.
So this link, if you can use language, you basically have the capability for music already built in. Is that the idea?
That seems to be the implication. A really deep, maybe innate connection. Which makes sense if music is a human universal. Think about those ancient bird bone flutes found. Music, or at least structured sound, has been with us for a very, very long time. Perhaps it was our first shared language.
That's a powerful thought. Okay, so if language has this musicality, how does that play out in creating songs? Barry talks about his song days method.
Right, the word drums. It's kind of a reversal of the usual process.
How so?
Well, usually you might start with a beat, a drum rhythm, right? And then you try to fit words to it.
Yeah.
But Barry points out that drum rhythms often don't really match natural speech rhythms easily. So his method flips it. You start with the words, find their inherent rhythm, the word drums, and build the music, even the drum track from that. He's made whole albums this way, apparently.
So the language itself provides the rhythmic seed. That's fascinating. He compares it to, like, Tin Pan Alley or the Brill Building.
Yeah, those songwriting factories where they often started with a title, a catchy phrase that became the hook or the chorus. It sort of brings back that old model of having a separate lyricist and composer, but the lyricist here is almost just the natural rhythm of the text itself.
And you can use any text, a diary entry, a shopping list even.
That's the idea. Find the rhythm in any piece of text, map it out, and that becomes your song sketch. He mentions taking a Baudelaire poem, music doth uplift me like a sea, and hearing a kind of sea shanty rhythm in it, then building the song from there.
That's amazing. The music was just hiding in the words. And what about dummy lyrics?
Oh yeah, placeholders. Songwriters use them all the time. Words thrown in just to fit the rhythm while they're working out the melody. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they get replaced. Barry suggests that in pop, often the words are there more for their rhythmic function than for deep meaning anyway.
Which really changes how you might listen to some pop songs.
Definitely. And this ties into how rhythm and meter affect meaning. There's this example of Jeff Berlin playing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, I think I've seen that. He shifts the words, right?
Yeah, displaces them by just one beat. And suddenly it sounds, well, completely different. Unfamiliar almost. Just a tiny rhythmic shift changes everything.
It's like that classic musical example, Beethoven's Fifth, that iconic opening. It sounds like it starts right on the beat, but technically it's displaced by a little rest. Our brain just kind of corrects it.
Exactly. Perception fills it in. And some bands, like Rush, apparently really play with this. They let the natural rhythm of the lyrics dictate the musical meter, even if it leads to odd time signatures or shifting bar lines.
So the music follows the language, not the other way around.
Right. Like Geddy Lee singing Caught in the Camera Eye. Barry points out he sings caught on an upbeat, following the natural speech stress rather than forcing it onto a downbeat.
So while we don't speak, strictly musically all the time,
No, not like robots.
our speech patterns definitely have musical qualities that can be mapped. Like how you stress a simple phrase, what did you say, versus what did you say?
Totally different meanings, just from emphasis. And you can play that musically. It's inherent.
Okay, let's broaden out. Culture, place. How do they connect to this music language link?
Well, Barry argues that region really creates the voice of a culture. And that voice gets expressed through both language and music. Think about accents, dialects, and musical styles. They create memories of place, they define boundaries.
Like the Delta blues, you hear it and you instantly get a sense of place, right? Western Mississippi. The terms themselves, country blues, urban blues, they literally map geography onto the music.
Exactly, and it becomes this loop. Does the language shape the music, or does the music shape the language and culture? It's hard to pull them apart.
It seems totally intertwined.
And sometimes musical structures seem to mirror social structures. Barry mentions how some Asian cultures with maybe more rigid social norms often feature music with microtones.
Tiny intervals between notes.
Yeah, very small steps, perhaps reflecting tighter social spaces. Whereas some African or Native American music uses bigger melodic jumps, maybe expressing more open landscapes or different social dynamics.
That's a really interesting idea. What about something like hip-hop?
Well, he suggests that the sound itself, the cadence, the tone, the delivery immediately signals a stance, a position, often defending boundaries. It can even, sometimes unintentionally, create social divides based on who understands or uses certain slang or styles.
In Alan Lomax's finding about raspy voices in war chants, still showing up in music today.
Yeah, suggesting these sonic links to things like power or aggression go way, way back.
It's ironic, though, isn't it? We create these cultural boundaries with language, with slang, and then they can become barriers themselves.
Totally, they can box us in, but music has this amazing power to cross those same barriers.
Even when it's full of the dialect that helped create the barrier.
Especially then, sometimes. Think about how gospel and folk traditions blended in the American South, feeding into the blues. Music finds ways to connect across divides.
And that call and response idea in Mississippi blues, pitching sounds backward and forward.
Right, it breaks down the wall between the performer and the audience. Everyone becomes part of the sound, part of the experience. Makes everyone one, as Barry puts it.
It connects to group singing, too, right?
Yeah.
That power of collective voice.
Absolutely. From, Lutheran hymns, bringing congregational singing into worship, to protest movements using songs to build unity. Otis Gibbs has that great line about imperfect voices soaring together. It's not about perfection. It's about the shared act, the collective energy.
But our own culture can also limit our hearing, in a way.
Yeah.
Like those complex Bulgarian rhythms.
Yeah, odd time signatures like 7/16 or 9/16. If you didn't grow up with it, it can sound, well, just weird or inaccessible. It's just our brains get kind of wired by the musical language we're immersed in.
So can music and art help us get beyond the limits of just words?
Barry thinks so. He mentions studies like African natives recognizing photos printed on cloth but not paper initially. It suggests art can bypass certain learned constructs in the brain. It helps us see or hear things differently, break down those ingrained ways of interpreting the world.
Like auditory illusions.
Yeah, or visual ones like the duck rabbit. We can perceive the same stimulus in different ways. It makes you wonder, should we have personalized EQs based on our individual hearing?
Huh. Okay, shifting gears. AI, creativity in machines. This is a big one now.
Huge. And Barry sees AI, currently at least, as a bit of a double-edged sword for music and language.
How so? What are the limitations?
Well, right now, AI often struggles with natural rhythm. It can force words into really awkward, clumsy phrases, and the lyrics it generates, often pretty generic, full of cliches. He tried prompting it to write in the style of David Bowie. Still came out kind of flat, apparently. Lacking that human spark, that context, that history.
So it doesn't really understand the deep connection we've been talking about, the emotion, the cultural weight.
Not in the same way, no. Which is why Barry emphasizes sticking with hands-on creation. Controlling the seeds for ideas, as he puts it. He's not a fan of just letting the code write the song.
He talks about musicism, too, using existing music, like sampling.
Yeah, like a collage in visual art. Taking existing pieces and recontextualizing them. He gives examples of political mashups, using clips from sermons. Not to endorse them, he clarifies, but to create a kind of alternate version of reality, using the sound and juxtaposition to make a point or state an opinion.
That feels very relevant to how media works now, right? Everything fragmented, constantly recontextualized online.
Definitely. From what he calls the push media back in 2001 to today's constant barrage, it changes how we hear songs, how meanings get attached or even eroded. Like live and let die being used in pandemic contexts. The original meaning gets blurred.
So with AI getting more powerful, there are ethical questions about control, aren't there?
Big time. Like those morality settings they talk about for self-driving cars, what are the defaults? Who sets them? Could they change without us knowing?
And how would AI handle ambiguity, those perceptual blindness tests? Like the person in a gorilla suit walking through a basketball game. Would AI see it?
Good question. These are fundamental challenges in machine perception that have implications for creative AI too. If it can't perceive nuance, how can it create nuanced art? It makes you think about the future of even just finding music, song shopping. Could AI hack metadata to push certain things, bury others?
Wow, lots to consider there. Let's pull back to the human element, cognition, touch.
Right. Barry suggests that musicians might literally have different brain wiring. And he stresses the importance of tactile interaction, actually turning a physical knob, playing a real instrument. It engages the brain differently, builds what he calls embodied memory.
Compared to just clicking a mouse or tapping a screen.
Yeah. Digital interfaces can hide complexity. Physical controls have a kind of vestigial wisdom built into the gestures. He mentions the weird feeling of switching between a virtual synth on a screen and a real one with knobs. It's like switching between different kinds of knowing, standard versus slang, almost.
That makes sense. The physical act anchors the knowledge differently. And what about meaning and bias in language itself?
Well, think about tone words, like saying nice. The word is the same, but the prosody, the melody of your voice changes the meaning entirely.
Sarcastic nice versus genuine nice.
Exactly. And he traces language from primal sounds like to emojis, noting we sometimes lose that crucial prosody in digital communication. And then there's linguistic relativism, how language shapes thought. It affects interface design, art.
How so?
Think about spatial metaphors. We say volume is loud and soft, faucets are hot and cold, one term gets top billing. These become burned-in standards. Try swapping hot and cold taps, instant confusion. Language creates these biases.
So turning to art, there's a paradox here, isn't there? Reducing language can actually deepen meaning.
Yeah, like in poetry or music, leaving space, ambiguity. It invites contemplation. Think of Mark Twain's direct, sparse style, very impactful.
And jazz.
It evolved, Barry suggests, from something simpler into this complex, almost coded language designed to make you think, to feel, to figure things out, which leads to that idea. Music is music as music, and everything else is everything else. Does music just communicate on its own terms beyond words?
It's a balance, maybe? Too many words can stifle the music, but too few might leave it unanchored. He mentions Fleetwood Mac's Bare Trees.
Right, minimal lyrics, letting the music dominate. It's that slippage between sense and nonsense, like with someone like Ornette Coleman, that can be really compelling. It keeps you engaged, questioning.
So creativity, it's this ongoing process, never really starting from scratch.
Barry sees it as a fractal chain. You work with the exhaust or residue of previous ideas, so writer's block. Not really a thing if you see all existing text, all existing sound as potential starting material.
The key is resolving ideas, finding the true intention. It brings us back to that ship of Theseus idea.
Yeah, if you replace every part, is it still the same thing? Whether it's a ship, a song evolving through drafts, or even our own brains changing over time.
It's a fascinating way to think about identity and creation.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground here. Ancient links, culture, brains, AI, all swirling around music and language.
And the constant theme is that deep interplay, isn't it? Language is musical. Music constantly echoes language's rhythm, its meaning, its voice.
So the final thought for you, the listener. As music and language keep evolving, bumping up against each other, shaped by tech like AI, what does that mean for us, for our future?
Yeah, will we find new ways to, truly sing our experiences? Or will we let the machines do more of the talking, the playing for us?
What kind of music of language will define this next era? And maybe more importantly, how will you add your own voice, your own rhythm to it?